Hello and welcome to day 7 of 7 days of Halloween. Hi everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to my channel. Well, it's the 7th day of my 7 days of Halloween, so this is going to be my last card, or I should say cards, of the series. Now, I haven't quite decided if I'm finished with my Halloween cards yet, so you may see a few more videos on my YouTube channel, but as far as the series, this is going to do it. So today what I wanted to do is to create some backgrounds using some of my embossing powder and some of my inks. Now, many of us know that we can create a resist by using some of our embossing powders, but for some reason, this is a technique that I don't usually go to very often, and I'm not really sure why, because it really does create a great effect. So for my last couple of cards, I wanted to go ahead and create an apothecary theme, because, you know, those are my favorites. So I went into my stamp set and I pulled out the stamp set called Laboratory. And this isn't necessarily a Halloween stamp set, but it really does work great for Halloween cards. I wanted to create a background, so I'm using one of the stamps that kind of has formulas in the background. Now, after I started decorating the background and I went to get my stamp set for my focal point, I decided I probably should have been a little bit more strategic about my background. The stamp set that I'm going to use for my focal point is called Mini Halloween, and it has a really great pharmacist along with some apothecary bottles. So originally I thought, well, I would just go ahead and be somewhat strategic about laying down the stamp sets, but when I started to lay down the pharmacist, I saw that the background kind of went through him because I didn't do any of my matting. And then I decided my pharmacist was going to be a ghost. So it made sense that you'd be able to see right through him. So that's the theme I'm going for, and that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. For some odd reason, I'm always one to try to create a story or a backstory for my cards, and I like for it to kind of have a theme. So whenever I am creating my cards, for whatever reason, I have to have a backstory in my mind, and that's kind of what brings out my creativity. I'm not sure if any of you crafters out there come up with some sort of a theme or some sort of a backstory for your characters, but for me, it really helps me to create my story. So once I was comfortable with the fact that my pharmacist was going to be see-through, and again, he's going to be a ghost, then I went ahead and proceeded with my layout. So as you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and lay it down so he is in the background, and then he's going to have all of his apothecary bottles and all of his little tools right in front of him. Now I have to compliment Tim on his stamps for this set because, as you can see, he did leave enough room in front of that pharmacist to add all of his bottles. If it's perfectly right where that apron is, so I really didn't have to do any matting or anything like that. And you'll find on a lot of his sets, if you just play with the stamps, they really do go together pretty well, especially if you don't want to have to pull out some of those sheets to be able to mat your images. All right, so once I had my focal point, then I decided I wanted to come in with just some random stamps just around him to fill in the extra open space. So I went to my stamp set called Eccentric, and this is the one that came out recently, which has that big number 5, and it has some wonderful words. And I went ahead and I pulled out the number 4.5. I'm not really sure why I did that, but I thought it was a nice addition to the card, and it really did fit into that space perfectly. And then once I was happy with my stamping, I went ahead and I got my embossing powder out and I added it to my image. Now, as you can see in the embossing powder, it has a little bit of sparkles, and I've mixed a couple of embossing powders. To be honest, I don't even know what embossing colors I have. I know it's clear, and then I know another one has some sparkles in it, and I just kind of added them together. I really didn't mind, because typically when I use embossing powder, it is the clear embossing powder, unless I'm using some of the embossing powders from Tim Holtz. And his powders are actually called embossing glazes, and you've seen me use those in some of my prior videos. I won't be using it for this particular one, but typically if I want to bring out a little bit of color, then I'll use those. But for this particular card, I just wanted to make my image a little bit darker, and I love the effect that I get when I use clear embossing powder onto my ink. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add some color to my ghost here. And as you can see, I do have that purple and the blue in the background. So I wanted to make sure I grabbed some Copic colors that would be dark enough to cover up that purple. Now again, if you were strategic about the stamping, you probably would have stamped your focal point first and then did your background and then added your color. But I kind of went the opposite. But I really wanted to show you that you don't have to necessarily have your whole card planned out when you sit down to stamp. I knew I was going to do the apothecary theme, and I knew I wanted to use that distress resist, but I really didn't think about how I was going to color this character. But in the end, I just knew if I got some darker colors, it would be fine. And what I ended up doing to make sure that those colors were nice and dark, I colored them with my Copic, but then again, I came in with my my embossing powders just so it would give that pop. So as you can see here, I'm adding some gray to his mustache. I added a little bit of a skin tone to his face just to kind of mute out that purple a little bit. And then I added blue for his vest, and then I made his shirt gray. So it's just enough color to kind of bring him outside of the background, because as you saw, he did kind of blend into that purple background, and I really wanted him to stand out a bit. So I added the Copic colors, and then again, I went in with that distress ink, or excuse me, the embossing powders to go over my Copic colors, just again to add that pop. And if you've never worked with embossing powders, basically what it is ground up plastic. So when you add heat to it, it gives it that shiny effect, which is really great. And I love how it looks. So I decided to use that on my character. All right, so for the bottles, again, I went really simple. I just brought out some of those skin tones, just enough to give it a little bit of a shadow. I brought out some really light gray, and I highlighted the edges just again to help those bottles stand out a little bit, but not necessarily add too much color. I wanted them to continue to be see-through, and that's why I went with the lighter colors. And then when once I was happy with the coloring that I had done, then I got out my guillotine trimmer, because again, I've shared with you before, I like to have my card bases a little bit larger than the finished size of my card, because I like for my background to look organic. So I find if I actually trim it down to the size that I want and then stamp, it looks too staged for me. So I like to go ahead and create my background, do all my stamping, and then trim my card. Now for specific items, like if you can see on the bottom here, I have a little stamp called Workroom 220, and I knew that I didn't necessarily want to cut that off, so I did move it a little bit towards, I don't want to say the center, but you know, not too close to the edge, knowing that I was going to trim it. So keep that in mind, especially if you start with a bigger card base and you don't want to cut off your work. Kind of keep that in mind when you're stamping. And then once I was happy with the layout, then I went ahead and I trimmed it down. Now for my A2 cards, my design is going to be 3 3/4 because I typically like to have a border, but because I didn't necessarily want to cut off some of my edges, I trimmed this one at 4, and then my black background is exactly 4 1/4. So I'm not going to have the usual white border that I have on the card for this particular one. And then for my finishing touch, I did add this elixirs and potions. And this is something that I created. I don't know if you remember several years ago, Tim Holtz came out with a whole set of the chipboards that had all of the Halloween words and whatnot. But you can't find those anymore. I've searched, believe me, and I can't find them. So I decided that I am going to create my own. So I just went into Photoshop and created some fun Halloween words and printed them out, and I added it to some chipboard just to give it a little bit of height. All right, so let's go on to the next card. So again, I wanted to keep with the apothecary theme. And I had this stamp set that I've had forever. I don't even know where I got it, but it's kind of a friendship healing birthday stamp. But as you can see, it has those great scales, and it has some apothecary themed bottles. So I thought, well, let me go ahead and create a background, because I have this fun skeleton image here that is just a great focal point. So I can make him the focal point of my card, and then just have the apothecary items and tools for my background. So I just started to build my background. Now I knew that that character was going to cover most of my background, so I really didn't worry too much about how I placed everything, other than the fact that I didn't want to do an overlay, because I didn't want to have to worry about covering up some of the items that I've already stamped. So the pharmacist label that you're seeing here, the Weber and Judco, is from that Halloween mini set. So I just kind of grabbed that. I thought it was a great addition. And then there's also this great spider stamp that's coming down on a web, and I wanted to try to incorporate that as well. Knowing that my my skeleton character, was going to cover most of it, I kind of wanted to make sure when I did place that spider stamp that I'm going to be sharing with you in just a minute, that I placed him strategically so I would not cover him up. And then after I had everything stamped, then again, I came in with my embossing powder. And again, this is just really just to darken up my images. So that way also when I add some color, I've got some nice dark black outlines. And it really helps for your background to pop. Now, as I said, this is my last card for my 7 days of Halloween, and I am going to be doing a drawing in a couple of weeks. I do have a link below that you can register for my drawing by clicking the link and providing me with your information. So be sure to check back in a few weeks for my winners post so you can see if you have won my giveaway. Also, in a few days, I'm going to be announcing a new way for you to help me support my channel, and I'm going to be opening up a Patreon subscription. And many of you are probably familiar with this. And I've kind of kicked around the idea if I really wanted to do this, but I decided, since I'm starting to build a really great community, that I can offer some additional perks for those that follow me on my channel, and for those of you that want to help support me. So be watching for that in the next few days. All right, now I also played with the idea of adding a paper doll. I thought, with those scales there, that it would be kind of fun if there was a paper doll that was sitting on one of the scales. But when I played around with it, I wasn't really happy with the black image. I know I could have probably colored the paper doll, but in the end, I decided not to add one of my paper dolls. And believe me, that was a big decision not to do that, because I love playing with my paper dolls. But I decided to just stick with that skeleton image. All right, so for the coloring, I didn't do anything too crazy. I just brought out, again, some of those brown tones. I brought out some grays, and then I brought out some of those beiges for those vials and beacons. So it was just a very simple background. Again, I wanted to kind of highlight the items without adding too much color, because I really wanted my character to be my focal point. And then after I colored everything up, I did come in with a stencil because I wanted my background to look a little bit more grungy. So I added some of my, what did I use? I used pumice stone with a stencil that I'm going to be sharing with you to just kind of add some grunge to the background. And then ultimately I did add some highlights around the outside of the card. So you're going to see it really comes together nicely. And then once I had everything colored, I had to decide what I was going to do with this character. Originally, I thought I was just going to go ahead and glue him down and have the stamps on the background. But then ultimately, I decided to go ahead and pop him up. And really, for a simple card, it came out really cute. I was really happy with it. You're going to see in a minute here after I get all of my coloring done. I do go in and I trim my sides, and I have to trim off some of that scale. But again, when you are finishing up your card, just think about the finished product. Don't get too hung up on cutting off parts of your image. You're going for the final effect. You're not necessarily going for a result to have to show every stamp that you've used. Now, ideally, like I've said in the past, if you do want something specific to show and not get cut off, be strategic about your stamping. I knew I wasn't going to cut off that spider on the left-hand side, so most of my trimming had to come on my right side. And I knew that, and I was okay with that. And that's why I ended up positioning that poison stamp a little bit more towards the center, because I knew I wanted that to show as well. So you don't have to put a lot of thought into your cards, but you have to put a little bit at least. Remember, card making is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be stressful. And I have been doing this for a very long time. I've had several people tell me that when they watch my videos, I make it look so easy. And honestly, you guys, it is really easy for me. It doesn't take a lot for me to put these cards together because I've been doing it for a really long time. But I do it for the pure joyness of creating. I don't feel like I have to be a perfectionist. I've never felt I had to be a perfectionist in my card making. And once you get past that, then it's just fun to create. So enjoy the process. Don't necessarily feel like your cards have to be perfect. I have this YouTube channel to encourage you and to give you ideas, but certainly grab from your own arsenal of ideas and come up with layouts and mix up your stamps as I've showed you here in the videos to get the most out of your sets. And one thing I also want to say is that I've really appreciated all of the encouragement all of you give me. Your comments through this series and just on my YouTube channel have been wonderful. They've been very encouraging and very complimentary. So I truly, truly appreciate all of your comments and all of your encouragement. When I started this YouTube channel, I did it mostly for me because I thought it would be fun to share my process and my journey of my creations. And through the years, this series, my 7 Days of Halloween, has become a favorite for not only for myself, but for many of you followers as well. So I appreciate your continuous encouragement to continue to keep this series going. And even though it's been difficult this year with everything going on in my life, to get my 7 videos taped, I'm so glad that I was able to give you some ideas for Halloween and hopefully encourage you to get out all of your stamps and all of your inks and just create. So if you are new to my channel and you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you head out today. And if you've enjoyed the video, whether you are a new subscriber or one that's been around for a while, don't forget to hit the like button because that really does help my channel. Now remember, I'm going to be doing a drawing, so check out the links below, not only for the products, but also for that link to enter the giveaway, because I am going to be doing a giveaway in the next couple of weeks. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be giving away, but it'll probably be something towards Halloween, I think, but I'll see what I can figure out for you. So I'm going to finish off here with some of my creepy music, and at the end of the video I'll have pictures of the finished cards, so be sure to hang around and check those out as well. All right, everybody, I hope that you've enjoyed my 7 days of creepy Halloween cards, and I've given you some ideas for your makes. And I will be back with more videos for you. I don't know if I will have any more Halloween cards, but I'll certainly do my best to maybe try to get a couple more in there before I have to put away those stamps. All right, everybody, thanks so much for your support and your encouragement, and we'll see you again next time.